Hi and welcome to RCKicks. On today's show, well, we're going to do something a little bit different. I've managed to get hold of a Tamiya catalogue from way back in 1996. So I thought it would be kind of cool to go through it, look at some of the new cars that were coming out back then, and discuss what we've seen recently versus what was out back in the day. So the first thing we're going to have a look at is we turn it over, and one that we actually saw quite recently was the Opel Calibra. Now, there's more images of it later on, but it was great to see it was released earlier this year, or was it last year? I can't remember, time moves on so fast, with its original chassis. And in real life, it is much better looking than I thought when I was building it. I originally got it on the show just to get it as new content, but yeah, I fell in love with it. So now it's part of the actual collection. So much so, I actually spent an absolute fortune and got the carbon chassis conversion from Tamiya and fitted that on the show. I love the presentation of these when they're done. Now, the first side of it is the 1/24 scale, and this is all the models that they do. Now, obviously, Tamiya is predominantly a model company, and then they do RCs as well, and they do it so well. Me personally, I love the detail level that you get for model kits like this. But I just wish that they were actually moving. So for me personally, I would love to see this detail level then migrated into RCs. Now, obviously, they get very fragile if you've got so much detail in them. But I don't know, I can see there being a bit of a niche to have more and more detail. But as an RC, as a static model, they just don't do it for me as much as if I knew they actually ran, drive, and the suspension works. This looks very familiar. Yes, it's the R89C that I did, but obviously this is the model version, which is the 1/24. Now, one thing that I use as a little tip sometimes, when Tamiya does agreements with all the manufacturers, to do licensing and things like that, sometimes you see models come out as the static kits first, and then if we're really lucky, they get ported over into RC, which is exactly what we saw this year with the Senna. There was an original Senna that came out, which was the 1/24, which is kit 24355, and then because they had the licensing agreement with that, it was very easy for Tamiya to then port it over to the just released McLaren Senna that we saw today. But the presentation is absolutely beautiful. Also, these two over here, the Michelin Pilot Ford Escort RS Cosworths. Oh, wouldn't it be fantastic if we could see them again as RCs? And there's no reason why we can't. The chassis has been made, even some of the body's been done. It'd just be really nice to get an official kit, but I don't know whether the licensing is still valid or not. I honestly don't know. Also, I think what would be really cool is to see an RC convertible done with seats and interior as well. I don't think it would be that difficult to do something like that. One I would love to see re-released again is the Mazda 787B. Now, obviously, this is the 1/24 kit, but it is a gorgeous Group C car. I think actually there's some images in this one, but these are all basically models. Now, being a Formula One fan myself, it's lovely to see all the engine detail, but I would love to see this merged together with an RC. Can you imagine how cool it would be to have it all hidden? And being that the electronics now are a lot smaller, it would be really easy to do. And I don't know, as far as I can tell, that anybody's actually doing it. Some total classics, obviously being a Formula One fan since I was about 7, all these are very familiar to me, and I've painted up a few. I've done a few Ferrari F1 cars in the collection over the years. The Minis, I actually had a red Mini back in the day, so these are very close to my heart. Motorbikes, never really been interested in motorbikes, mainly because I'm very short, so I just fall off them when they stop moving. But some of the detail levels, and there is a few people that I've seen actually painting these up, and they do a stunning attention to detail where all the exhaust shows all the heat and things like that. Boats, never really been into doing boats. Also, RC boats are something that I would put on the channel, but there's just nowhere around here to actually do any boat and without going and trying to find a river or something like that. But there's none really around me. One thing that did surprise me when I looked at this manual is this catalogue was just how many solar cars that Tamiya actually did. I could have sworn there was only one, but according to this, there's 4 different versions of it. Now, I remember back in the day looking at these manuals when I used to go to BT's in Ealing, used to have these sort of demo ones of these magazines sitting on the side, and you flick through all the amazing little bits and pieces that Tamiya would actually do, from scissors, soldering irons, just about everything you could think of. And you'd thumb through these catalogues and you'd be there for ages until your mum screamed at you to get a move on because they're going to a different shop. Beautiful tanks. Obviously, these are models. These are not RCs still. Then you've got 1 to 100 scale. I've never seen these before. A little Terra Conqueror Mini 1/100th. Never seen them in real life at all. If you've got one of these, comment below. If you've got any pictures, put it on the RCKicks Facebook group. Then we go into the model planes. I did do a few model planes when I was younger, but nothing super special. It was mainly Airfix and very basic kits, a Spitfire, and I actually think I did a Sea Harrier at one point, but that's about as far as I got because I didn't really have attention to enough of an attention span to spend that much time painting them all up. Yeah, the Spitfire was a classic, and I think pretty much everyone who's been into sort of planes and cars and stuff probably did a Spitfire at some time or another from Tamiya or Airfix. Now you can see Tamiya just does absolutely tons and tons of military. Never really been into it myself. I do like the RCs, like I've said before, but static models, I don't know, for some reason. And when you do full scenes and stuff like that, I just don't think I've got the attention span or the skills to actually paint something up like this at all. As for the boats, never remember the boats whatsoever. The scale 1 to 700. But it's really interesting to see them now. These are very pretty, I must admit, but I know absolutely nothing about warships and models or anything like that. My painting skills are just not there. RC cars is pretty much as far as I get. Now these would look beautiful to fly these, but I would happily crash them into the ground, that's for sure. It's funny to see some of these, like there's a Terra Conqueror. So it's funny to see the Terra Conqueror popping up in lots of different genres, should I say, from Tamiya at the time. Now we move on to the RCs, which is my really interesting aspect of it. So here we go. So a lot of you will probably remember that you started out back on the quick drive RC. These actually look really good. I can't say the Avanti 2001 QD looks that great, and I've seen a few of them coming up for sale. Not really my cup of tea, but the Monster Beetle and the Blackfoot look really good. So yeah, I know a lot of people started out on these because they were a lot cheaper and they were already built for you, and then migrated up to full kits. So what have we got here? The Mondeo. A lot of people are a big fan of these kits. Also, when I did the RCKicks meet, there was someone, I'm sorry I forgot his name, who was a massive fan of the Ford Mondeo, and he had like 5 of them, and the amount of effort that he put into them. He had a mint one, he had a whole range of them from drivers, but he also had a display one where he'd started cutting out parts of the chassis. That one day I think I'm going to try and emulate that, but it was beautiful because you cut pieces of the wheels away and the chassis away, but you remove just enough so it will continue to work, so you can actually see it moving, like the diffs and things like that. If I've got any footage of that, I'll put it up now so you can have a look at it. Add spec transmitters. I've actually managed to get one of these. I've got one new in box. Purely, it was quite reasonable at the time. I know they now demand quite a lot of money. Not that I really use it, but being that it's new in box, I thought it'd be nice to add to the collection. As well as I've got a few battery packs from Tamiya. Not that they work or I use them, but they're in great shape and they're nice to have on the shelf. Some of the things that I really like are these, the vintage brushed motors from Tamiya. Now, these are all demanding quite high prices, especially if you find ones with boxes. So it's nice to actually see the specifications for them. The Dynatech, I happen to have a Dynatech. The Acto Powers are now really actually quite difficult to get hold of if you want mint ones. And when you're collecting motors, the condition is everything. So a new inbox one demands massive amounts of money versus a used, scratched and damaged ones. But if you don't mind picking up one that's been used, you can service them yourself, and you can also repaint them, and you can pick up aftermarket decals to replace them. So you can bring them back to quite a respectable condition if you want to put them in a runner, for example. Tons of hop-up specs, and you can spend hours and hours looking at this. Tune-up examples of the chassis, and there's the T802, a bit like the Opel one I was telling you about, and this one's got the upgraded carbon and lots of different bits and pieces for them. So you can spend ages and ages looking at all the upgrades, but Tamiya really know how to do their images, and look at some of these, they're absolutely beautiful. Looking at these decals, this has always scared me a little bit on how you actually do this back section. Whether we'll end up seeing this again, I honestly don't know, but it could be possible. Look at these. Now, this is very relevant to RCKicks because I just picked up a perfect condition M-01 from Andy Robinson at Andy Robinson RC, because I've actually got a body set from the 94 Monte Carlo to do. So having a brand new M01 chassis and a brand new body that I will bring on the show is going to give me a lovely example of one of these. And I've really wanted one for a long time, and they're so difficult to get hold of. Also, I actually have a Mini Cooper that was built new in box, but I just need to paint up the body. So hopefully I'm going to have two mint minis in the collection. Typical, I wanted one for ages and now I've got two, so I'm super lucky. But they are different enough to justify having both of them, being that one is M01 and the Cooper that I've got is on the M05, so it's a later version. But what I would love to see, and I'm sure a lot of you would as well, is these. I mean, they're absolutely gorgeous. Now, the chassis have been released. There's no reason why we can't get these apart from licensing. And I must admit, I would love to do a new in-box build of the Pilot Sport. It is gorgeous, and I remember them from back in the day. So yeah, for me, that would be a special build. So I keep my fingers crossed that we actually see them from Tamiya at some point. Again, some absolutely beautiful and very challenging decal sheets when I look at this. I'm not quite sure how you go about putting the decals on this one here, but oh my gosh. But there it is. There's the Opel. And if you get a chance to get one of these, I highly recommend it. And it was brilliant to see it actually on the correct chassis, not put onto a TT02, for instance. And that I really like. You can put some serious time and effort into these cars because the decals are so complicated. There it is, the HKS Opel. Look at the back of that. Oh my god, the decals on that. Also, I was looking down at this one over here. This is a serious amount of work. That's the Renault Benetton. Yeah, there it is there. Yeah, I remember that really well, but putting that decal sheets on scares me after what I've just been through. But beautiful magazines, 10 out of 10 for their presentation. The what's this? This is the CC01. Now at CC01 we saw quite a lot of different versions, and one of my favorite was always the Jeep Wrangler version. I think that was the way they did it, the amount of details. I really liked it. Not the most capable of chassis, and the CC02 is way more advanced, but you still can pick them up, and the detail of the bodies is great. Now this is really interesting. This is the M1025 Hummer that came out, and you can see the actual chassis is different to my XB one that I had on the show recently. The body is exactly the same, but why it was actually changed to a different chassis instead of this standard chassis, that to this day I have no idea. Another one that kind of is an interesting one is we have seen that the Stadium Blitzer came out and the Stadium Blitzer Beetle came out, but again, no Falcon. But as we can see, it uses the same tub and a lot of the parts. So surprising why we haven't seen the Falcon. Now, one thing that a lot of people don't really know about is the Dynablaster. Now, I've had it on the show, but if you haven't been watching the show for a while, the Dynablaster is the distant... what would you call it? The unfamous brother of the Dynastorm. Now, the Dynastorm we all know is very, very famous racing buggy, and this is the sister car of that. And it's very close to the original, but I don't think it sold too well because it was a very expensive kit, and it kind of came out, as you can see from this catalogue, along the same time as the Stadium Blitzer. Well, if you look at the Stadium Blitzer here and you look at the Dynablaster, they don't look that different, but the price of these two kits was vastly different. So a lot of people didn't buy the Dynablaster because they got the Blitzer because it was much cheaper, and missed out because this is an absolute stunning car. And if you ever get the chance to get one of those, definitely get it because it's a highly performance out of all of them. Definitely recommend it, and it is good looking. Then we go the Madcap. Yes, I do miss my Madcap. I sold it, unfortunately, and I pray that we see a re-release of the Madcap. This is a really beautiful buggy, and in real life it looks much better than it does in the photographs. But I keep my fingers crossed because there is a space in my collection where I really miss selling that on. But I was made a good offer, so I couldn't really turn it down, and it went to a good home. But boy, do I miss it, and it's one of the cars I regret selling this year. Also, this time the Top Force Evolution came out on 58107. Now obviously we've had the re-release since then, but this is a beautiful and very special buggy, especially for me. About 3 or 4 years ago, before the re came out, I really wanted one of these, and they were so hard to find, and I paid really good money for it. But beautiful. If you hunt around now, you can get them at quite good money, so definitely worth picking up if you're new in box or you want to actually take it out and run it. But we haven't seen a Dirt Thrasher 58160. Why? I honestly don't know. Maybe we will see this. It would be very easy for them to bring this out because obviously we've had the chassis already. So keep an eye out. Maybe next year we'll get a Dirt Thrasher. Look at these trucks. Now, after building a truck myself, these are a massive commitment and very different to building an RC car. These are so time consuming that you have to bite them off in little tiny pieces is the best way to build one of these. You can't just go, right, I'll crack on and put the next 2 days into it, because you'll never achieve it. It takes much longer. So there's a whole different mindset, personally, I found, with building trucks. But the time you invest as it starts to come alive, it is a very rewarding. Now, the truck that I've built, I still haven't finished it. I've got to modify the inside so I can get all the dash in, and I've got to paint up the dash, as well as I need to have enough money available to get a trailer for it, and that's what I'd like to do. I would like something like this, and then if I could make a decal with the RCKicks logo and stuff like that to put on the side of it, that would be my kind of goal. But if you've been thinking about doing a truck, it's definitely better than you think. It's just a big commitment, but well worth doing. But they can be rather expensive. Then we have a few little planes and boats and stuff like that. I do remember them doing some boats back in the day, but again, something I'm just not into whatsoever. Then they've also got some petrol and then body sets that were available. Beautiful, like I said. Also, the paints. One thing I found here, the Tamiya paint mark. I never knew they did polycarbonate paint pens. Here we go, Tamiya polycarbonate marker. Now, I don't know if they still do these. I haven't seen them, and I don't remember seeing them back in the day. But that would be really handy. And I'm going to, after I finish this, I'm going to Google and see if I can find anything else about these, as I don't remember them until I saw this little section here in this catalogue. Obviously, we've got all the Tamiya paints as normal. I still use the little tiny ones. I do wish you could still get paint on polycarbonate paint that they kind of moved away to spray, because sometimes touching in and things like that are really, really helpful. Wouldn't it be nice if we had a few more colours as well? It doesn't look like we've had many additional colours added to the polycarbonate selection. So yeah, sometimes I get a bit frustrated and I kind of always default back to the same sort of colours. It would be nice if we had a few more options as well. And that's pretty much it. Tons and tons of their bits and pieces. Also, one I can recommend if you've never used it before is the Tamiya Polycarbonate Cleaner. That I use all the time for mistakes, overspray, fixing bleed throughs and stuff like that. It can be expensive and difficult to get hold of in the UK, but I can highly recommend it. And I think that pretty much covers everything that we got in this catalogue. Let me know what you think about this one. Did you like it? Would you like to see more of these? Anyway, thanks so much. See you on the next one. Bye-bye.